Good to speak to you. And you're over there in Paris. What brought you there?
About 6 years ago, I moved over. My girlfriend is actually from Paris. So since then, I've found it to be home. It feels way more like home than anywhere I've lived in the UK or anywhere else for that matter.
Okay.
There's something about it, especially for artists. I really feel comfortable here.
Well, that's important. I guess because I feel like still a bit of a city person. So a lot of cities in Europe, especially, I visit, I tend to feel very comfortable actually. And they always have like little different vibes, but there's always something they offer that's really good.
Yeah, there's something about Paris that initially attracted me to it. I think possibly because of its history with art and artists, and which I've always had a deep appreciation for. And with my girlfriend being an artist, it's been fascinating for me over the past few years to really immerse myself into that kind of world and to discover more disciplines and more techniques and a more varied world of art than I'd previously been exposed to in England. So it's a wonderful place, really.
Oh, it is wonderful, and actually, it kind of brings me on a little bit to some of the bits I wanted to ask you because I guess one thing you're known for, and I love about your music, is how it has changed so much over the years, and how so much of it can't be described really. So, do you think that is because of the influences you've had over the years? And as you say, you're now living in Paris, and that must have brought, and people you've met, like your girlfriend and different band members, that must have brought different influences to you as well.
Yes, I think all of your experiences, especially the most profound ones in your life, they do have a lasting resonance within your being. Yeah, you evolve as a human being throughout these experiences. So it's only natural that if you're trying to create something that is at once honest, at the same time intuitive and instinctive, then and open-minded and forward-thinking, then what you create is going to naturally reflect how you have evolved as a person. So just like all the positive things in life that can happen to you, like moving to a new place, like meeting people, having cool experiences, but also, some of the darker experiences in life, they can deeply affect you too. And all of these things, they color how you are as a human being.
Yeah.
And they make you go through certain phases, and I guess that it just never ends, really. It's an open-ended thing, really. It's what we're really talking about is the line that has to be drawn of whether music is art or entertainment. To Anathema, because to Anathema it's deeply personal. So therefore, we're not doing this to entertain other people.
Well, that's what I find with music. To me, it's very personal, and it's one of the most profound art forms because of that.
Yeah.
And the entertainment side of it can almost, be a big detriment, and it can be destroying it, or seen to be to a certain degree.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that because certain artists, they have to be entertainers. That's what they were born for, and the music that they create is well, for example, perfect example, AC/DC.
Okay.
Absolutely excellent band, one of the best of all time, and there's a reason that they've sold so many millions and millions of records, and they don't sound like anybody else but AC/DC, and nor would you want them to. Yeah, that's the kind of music that gets you going.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is entertainment, and they're doing that because they found their brand, they found their formula, they're sticking to it, and it's a similar thing with other rock bands around, or even electronic bands. And when people find something that people like, and they just want to do something that's going to please the crowd, that's something that's going to go down well. I mean, historically, that's what most artists do.
Right. So I see. Yeah, it's a good definition.
But I think that there is the certain breed of artists that creates for themselves, really. And indeed, the very notion that you would allow external expectation, whether that's the public or the record company or the press, media, what's in the charts, etc. All of those ideas. If you allow that to creep into your thinking, then it's going to be to the detriment of your art.
I guess that's what I was getting at,
yeah,
really, when I said it was destructive.
exactly.
It's probably too harsh and judgmental, but that's
no. It's absolutely true, but it's only for certain artists, certain breeds of artists, like, and those are the kind of artists which you would consider to be more individual and more free thinking. Now, I guess that there's a new kind of fad of you mentioned that at the very beginning of this interview, you did mention that it's difficult to classify Anathema's music, and I actually think you're right with that. But for some reason, it's kind of out of our hands. No matter what kind of music we make, people will always have to try and classify it as something. And I've noticed in the last couple of years that we seem to be embraced by a lot of the quote-unquote prog community.
Yeah.
Especially within the media, which is absolutely great, because really what we consider to be progressive is bands like the Beatles and Radiohead and Pink Floyd, bands who were absolutely following their own path and never afraid to change, never afraid to lose fans, and never afraid to always try new things and keep themselves interested and to express themselves in new ways. But always at the root of all of that, having good songwriting, good vocal melodies, good hooks, a kind of more of an, I wouldn't like to say a pop aesthetic, but something a bit more attuned to hooks and tunes. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah, to draw people in.
Yeah, exactly. Just writing songs, basically. It's songwriting, isn't it? So, like it is possible to be progressive, forward-thinking, and original, yet still do catchy tunes, that kind of thing. So this is somewhere where Anathema feels a bit more comfortable. I mean, if Radiohead are considered progressive, then absolutely we're comfortable with that,
Excellent, because when I speak to younger bands, especially at the moment, they often find themselves, especially if they're having to promote their own music or market it, to have to describe it. But sometimes they can't because maybe each of the members of the band have all sorts of different influences that they've grown up with. What they end up making together probably, or in some cases, hasn't happened before. So, which is kind of nice at the moment. We've come to this point in history where there's been this huge backlog of all different styles behind us.
Yeah, well, I really hope that continues to be the case. It's very, very important that kids still pick up guitars and pick up instruments and show everybody the way. That's historically what people have done. Unfortunately, it's actually not happened that much over the last 20 years. Here and there, you get the odd one or two, but there's been no mass movement in music, has there really, since the early 90s with the American new wave of rock bands that kind of rewrote what hard rock music was. They redefined what intensity was in hard music, and they made all of those poser glam hair metal bands question themselves.
Yeah, and, for sure.
Then the major labels joined on board, and it all became a bit of a sham. So it didn't last very long, but but there's been no real kind of nothing as far-reaching as that. I've got a few theories why that is actually, but I'm not sure how relevant it is to this interview.
I know what you mean, because recently what I was going to say was like literally the past week or so has been. I heard a couple of interviews with Chris Cornell because it was the 20th anniversary of Super Unknown by Soundgarden, and he was talking about how their music was, or they were involved in that change in what mainstream rock was. But then, you reminded me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine, Charlie, and he had one of his theories about why there hasn't been a new launch of a direction. Is that he had spent a bit of time squatching in London, and when it was a bit more or easier to do or a bit more prevalent, people were able to, especially like in their late teens, early 20s, when they moved to somewhere like London and had to survive for a little bit, they had a bit of time to do things creatively or do creative things. But
Yeah.
since they've been cracking down on squatting so much, and so it's harder to do. And
Yeah.
since the economy's changed, and where people have to struggle more to survive, it doesn't give people a lot of free time to devote to art forms or music.
Well, that could be true. I have a couple of theories. Where one is, first of all, that there's so much music out there. I mean, there's way more than there ever was. I mean, I think Tom York recently described it as starting a new band is like it's like picking up a pebble, and then you look at this huge, massive noise out there.
Yeah.
It's like a huge waterfall of noise, and you just pick up your pebble and you throw it in, and it just passes. And it's so difficult to get started. Also, I think strangely enough, when I look at music, waves of music and waves of fashion that have come along and changed everything, with the last one being that American rock movement of the early 90s.
Yeah.
I think things used to flow in a linear fashion. They were always a reaction against the generation before, or against the decade before, or the few years before. And these days, people are not reacting in a linear fashion anymore, because people are exposed to all eras at all times.
Right.
So there isn't really any need to react against anything. So there's and also it's just I think generally as well, I think the way that I think our culture itself is being diluted, and there's too much emphasis on instant gratification and social media and all of this. But I think really the two main things are, for one, the sheer volume of stuff that's out there, and two, the fact that music is not linear anymore.
Okay, I understand what you mean. So there's too much out there for people to focus in on.
Yeah, absolutely. No one's. I mean, especially like the music industry itself has changed as well. You've got to remember that. There's no decent record labels anymore wanting to invest in breaking a new artist. It just doesn't happen.
That's right. Yeah, and some bands have, as I said earlier, they have to promote themselves, so they have to kind of not just make the music, but actually learn ways of
they have
to.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anyone starting a band reading this now, I recommend you actually do that. You pick up a book by a guy called Donald Passman, and it's called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Industry, and I think it's in its 8th edition, so it keeps getting updated, and it's. That is a Bible for a young musician these days. I think you've got to read that book, and you have to understand what you're going to get yourself into, because it's the game has changed. When long gone are the days when you could expect other people to do things for you. You can't. Not anymore.
Yeah, for sure. So when you first started out, how was it for you when you formed the band or got into it and got into music? Did you sort of feel the passion? Was it straightforward for you to find a way of expressing it and getting into it?
Well, musically, absolutely. That was the most natural thing in the world. When we first signed the record deal, however, I would say that we were fairly naive. I think like most people, we didn't have anybody in the family or in our background. We didn't have any manager. Nobody that we knew who could actually warn us against some of the pitfalls that you enter into when you enter into the music industry. But that's, you have to learn the lessons for yourself, sometimes, and we did. But musically, we were supremely confident from day one. I think as soon as we found our identity, especially, which was probably about a year or so after we started, we wrote a song called Crestfallen, and that changed everything for us. After that song, we found something unique that we thought we had above everybody else, and something that set us apart.
So
you followed that.
You like the rock and metal side to start with, and I take it.
But this song
I guess you still enjoy it, but you just find your groove within it.
Exactly. Well, this song particularly musically was influenced by classical stuff. It actually, if you listen to how it was constructed, even on our second demo, you have the bass, which is acting like a cello. You have my guitar, which is like a viola, and Danny did 2 harmonies which are like two lead violins. Now, all four of those instruments are all playing different things in different rhythms and different melodies. It's different signatures. They follow a similar pattern to what a string quartet would do, you know.
Right.
It's like a four-part harmony in a way, but all in different movements. So at that point, we thought, okay, well, this is what we're good at. And at that point as well, we also started to experiment with other things. We had a 23-minute long ambient piece that was just purely on synthesizer. We had acoustic, folky sound and stuff. We had female vocals. We had classical sound and stuff. We did a song that was recorded entirely in reverse, and we had psychedelic sound and sections. You know, so I think it was natural, even at a very young age. You know, especially when we were listening heavily to bands like Pink Floyd and so on.
Yeah.
That we would follow that more experimental side within ourselves. You know, we were still very, very young, you know, so I think that was just going to come to the fore eventually. And also that we would figure out how to write a song without having to layer so many tracks down.
Yeah.
I think that came on the fourth album, Alternative 4. By this time we were still, you know, in our early 20s, and on that album particularly, we decided to strip everything back, tune the guitars back up to concert pitch, only have four elements going on at a certain time, and very, very deep and personal lyrics. Some of them very, very, very troubling. I think probably influenced a little bit by Roger Waters on The Wall and that kind of thing. You know, these notions of madness and despair. And so from there, we've always been trying to stay honest and true to ourselves, but just keep an open mind and keep looking forward with our music, and never repeat ourselves. Don't try and recreate the past, no matter how many people want you to do it.
Oh, you know? Exactly. Yeah, that's important in all manner of life, isn't it? In terms of moving forward in your life with yourself.
Yeah, I think, you know, I mean, that's just the kind of people we are. We have to be like that. And so if we were to allow ourselves to do music that we did in the past, that would be like selling out to us.
Yes.
You know, we'd be selling out, and we couldn't look ourselves in the mirror if we did that.
That's great, because that means even at that early age that you were very in tune with your intuition and very open as well.
Yeah.
And it's great that you harmonized with the other band members, because, you know, especially, you know, your family are involved as well, which must have helped, but also that you're all able to be like that and go through that together and help it evolve. Yeah,
but I think also, I mean, you have that kind of being northern working class, especially from Liverpool, you know, which you just felt a bit different to everybody else. You know, I know I did, and you know, I thought we always felt different to everybody else in the scene. And for good or bad, we just had this supreme confidence. You know, we just I can't speak for the rest of the band on this, and I won't. But me personally, even if I remember back to the first album, I thought we were the best band anywhere.
Oh, that's great.
On that scene, you know, so that's what happens, you know, when you're I was still in my adolescence, really, but I loved what we were doing, and I still thought that, you know, there was so much more to come, and it was after that when this whole scene started to build up around us, which was, I don't know, I mean, we always knew we were going to move away from that.
Yeah.
And we were going to move away from that successfully, you know.
Well, that's good. So, I mean, I guess a classic, a cliche, in a nice way, is that Liverpool's always had a really wonderful music scene and a source of inspiration for all sorts of styles of music. And
it has, yeah, but unfortunately not many artists have actually really broke through.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you of course got probably the best band of all time from Liverpool, but but apart from that, I mean, there's a few there's a few decent artists, but in the 80s and 90s, Manchester just took over.
Of course,
completely, and London's had their own fair share, you know. So Birmingham, you know, there's plenty of places. I think just in general, like the British Isles has got a very proud history in music. You know, I think we have been creating some of the most interesting music out there of any era. You know,
it's amazing, isn't it? I wonder why that is. Like for such a small island, of course, we've had such an influence on the world, and for, you know, good and bad reasons.
Well, if you look at it's not just the working class either, as well. You know, it's even people who went to like public school education. You know, like Pink Floyd, when They were not, okay, they weren't Eton boys, but they were, they were from good stock, let's say, haughty stock, and the same can be said for bands like Radiohead or even the Rolling Stones, to a certain degree, but
I guess it doesn't matter what your background is, as long as you do tune into how you are and what you like.
Yeah, there's just something about the British Isles that I don't know. I think there's a certain originality here.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of bands who start their own thing and don't actually sound like anybody else. They're like Black Sabbath. Nobody really sounded like. There was a lot of heavy rock going on in the late '60s, but no one really sounded like that, did they? And even Led Zeppelin, they were doing blues standards, but they sounded like nobody else, because just purely because of how good the musicians were. And Pink Floyd, Pink Floyd are an absolute treasure for the British Isles.
Really?
I think. Yeah, I think because of the just pure adventurous, seeking nature, always willing to reinvent themselves, always trying new things, and then eventually succeeding and doing the most profound stuff.
Yeah.
I think The Wall is a work of absolute genius. Because it's multidisciplinary as well. It's not just music; it's everything else that went with it. And it's still being reinvented now as a live stage show. It's incredible what that man has done. Yeah, Roger Waters is really one of the true auteurs of this country,
For sure.
And I think for these days, you've got Tom York as well. Tom York is right up there. He's as good as anyone there's been. I think, and he's still doing it now, and he's still got fresh ideas, and he's still doing amazing stuff, and he's one of the guys to always watch out for.
Yeah, they're going to keep going, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess so. But these, not just England as well. You've got to remember, Iceland has started produced a fair few for such a small country. Iceland has been leading the way as well. Quite a few times. Look at Björk.
Yeah, exactly. And and Sigur Rós and all these bands have come and experimented with all sorts of sounds and everything.
Yeah, I absolutely adore Björk. For exactly the reasons I mentioned about true progressive minds, true progressive music and true new ideas. I think more than anybody, she's pushing things forward in modern music. I mean, her latest project, Ophelia, was a multimedia, multidisciplinary affair. It was performance. It was an app. It was installations. It was music. It was almost like theatre. She would invent new instruments with, using nature, forces of nature to create music, So gravity was creating music. She would use pendulums, and she was having huge Tesla coils create rhythms from electricity. It even developed into an educational program, to show kids how to create music with modern technology. And, she's really, really flying the flag at the, right on the avant-garde. She's amazing. I really love her.
It's great that she's been able to find a platform like that. And I guess because it comes from, again, going back to when you first started out, and it's great that when you started out and you felt like you were the best band, sometimes when you feel so different, it can restrict people to be a bit afraid. But actually, I guess when you have that confidence, it can feed that, and it gives you that drive to move forward. And then, because I guess a lot of what stops a lot of people from living their passions, or even if they might think there's something that they might enjoy, but they don't pursue it because of a lot of fears that are instilled in us when we were brought up, and
self-doubt,
and by society and stuff, and people such as yourselves. And the example you gave of Björk is, I guess, you can get to this state where you're just constantly creating, where she's been just so pushing the boundaries so much that she's almost channeling this all the time, that she doesn't even have to think of it sometimes.
It's exactly right. But even she'll know whether she's done something that's good or not, and nobody else will be able to tell her anything otherwise. It's the same thing we've always had. Now, I mentioned that I personally thought that we were the best band in the scene, and it did, but it wasn't necessarily because of what we were producing. It was because of our minds, what we had within us to produce. It was what I knew we could be as well.
Right.
And that's the reason why we were always searching, always striving to improve. Now, this is the thing about, winning like album of the year or album of the month awards and things like this is all very well. But if you accept that, then you also have to accept it when people say that they don't like your music,
Right, of course.
And for me, I don't listen to either side of it. I like it or I don't, and that's enough for me. And it's got to move me enough. And if it gets me, then I'm completely bulletproof. And it doesn't matter what you think about it if I like it.
Well, that's
but at the other end of the scale, though, if I'm not particularly happy with a certain song, and other people start to say that's the best song on the album, I still won't listen to them. It's just the way it is.
Well, I can be like that with even just my show. Sometimes afterwards I'll be kind of really hard on myself because they're going back to we're our own worst critic. And
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Which is good to kind of have a standard, but sometimes that can work against you slightly. But it's great to hear that you have that belief because that keeps it real for you as well. Because
exactly.
What you're doing is true to how you are, and you're not doing it for anybody else.
Well, exactly, which brings us back to the first point of what is music. Is it art or entertainment? And for us, it is art, it is, and it is ours. And, all our new album's receiving rave reviews at the moment, but, to be honest with you, I want to do the next one.
Right, okay.
That's the way my mind works, and that's the same for the rest of the guys,
Well, that's great. So that answers one of my questions about, so you've obviously, just by hearing you talk, you've still got the passion for it.
Absolutely, yeah. What we measure ourselves against the greatest of all time. If we thought we were anywhere near that, we probably would tell you. But at the moment, we still think we've got a lot of things to do. We've got so much music to produce. We've only just started scratching the surfaces of our edges with electronics. That's something we'll delve into. It won't be the be all and end all of our sound ever. It'll be another element that's been added to the sound,
Sure. And you've used it more in this album, haven't you?
Exactly, yeah. But in the future, if we ever get to using brass sections or anything like of that, if we feel like that wants to become part of our sound, then we'll keep it, that's just the way it is. We keep the doors open for everything, really. And the kind of music that we want to make, there's a lot you can do with electronics. Yeah, so, it's an infinite world, really. Synthesizers are infinite,
Yeah, exactly. So do you think it's how you've evolved, and because you've changed your style so much, has that helped your longevity, do you think, and your enthusiasm over that period of time? Because sometimes when bands stick within a style, it can, obviously there are other dynamics within bands that can have an effect on their longevity, but... Well,
it depends, right? I don't know many bands that would stick with a style for like 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
And then, but just kind of go through the motions if they weren't making a shit ton of money from it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the only reason that you would want to, because you would just get bored. Anybody in their right mind would just get bored unless you were making a float of money, Now, with us, we probably could have made a lot more money than we did had we stuck to one particular style and just perfected that, just gone for the metal thing altogether and say, okay, you know what, we're a metal band, but we're going to be the best band around. And, but we couldn't do that, So, but I think on a personal level, it's certainly kept us interested, because that's, we always feel that we can do better next time out, always, every single record. We've never made an album thinking, okay, this is the one. Never.
Oh, that's great.
And also, I think for your audience as well, it's definitely kept them interested as well, because if I am able to remove myself from the situation and try and view our discography subjectively, it's quite an interesting path that we've chosen. It's quite a unique one, and I don't think there's very many bands out there that have had such an extreme evolution. So I definitely think becoming one of those bands that you always know is going to try new things with every release that's something I'm actually quite proud of, really, as I'm proud to be one of those bands.
And you kind of touch on it a little bit, but do you find that the evolution in your sound and the music has coincided with your own personal development and progression, because there has been points in your music over the years that, as you said, that have been quite dark and emotional times, and sort of maybe slightly more depressive rap subjects. But then there are times like in Weather Systems, really optimistic and really expansive times as well. And just hearing you talk, actually, from the start when you're talking about art and everything, you sound very clear and sound very balanced within yourself. And I guess I think that's gone hand in hand.
For my personal creativity, I would say absolutely. I mean, it's grown exponentially over the past, say, 4 or 5 years. But I guess part of the reason for that as well is of course being happy internally, at least at peace.
Yeah,
I would say that at a certain amount of peace. I wouldn't say I'm completely out of the woods, but a certain amount of happiness. And without getting into too much personal detail, I know exactly how I did that and when I did that, but I had to do it. I had to make changes within my life in order to escape the past, to really let the past go. I think that's the best way to put it, really, because I was carrying a lot of baggage around, old relationships, behavior patterns, different ways of thinking, different ways of being, and I had quite a negative self-image, and all those doubts, as you mentioned, those doubts and fears and self-doubt especially can really become obstacles to your creativity. But then once I figured out that I could change how I lived and with whom I lived and everything about my life, I changed it all, and then started to realize that my creative juices were starting to come back, and I started to realize quickly over the course of about a week that I was actually a pretty okay guy, and I didn't need to have this fear and worry anymore. And then after that, over the course of the next week, all of that stuff just fell off, like I was just dropping bags from my shoulder. And then after that, I think it's important to mention, though, that I did that. It wasn't anybody else that came over and said, okay, saved, like falling in love isn't going to do that, nothing. You've got to do the work yourself. But after that, it all happened, and because I was in a positive place, good things started to happen to me. Now, a couple of years down the line, we're here because we're here in our own home studio place, and I'm learning new studio techniques. I used to work in a studio when I was 17, but I put it to one side, and then all of a sudden, I'm learning how to self-produce. I'm learning how to use the equipment, how to use the software and the technology. And as a consequence of that, I'm teaching myself how to compose with these new technologies.
Oh, excellent.
And that's been growing and growing ever since. So the last couple of years have been extremely creative for me personally. And I think I could probably speak for Danny, where I'd say that his own personal headspace has been a lot clearer the last few years, especially since he quit drinking.
Right.
Because he needed to. Some people just need to, and he's never looked back, and he's a better person for it. But I think at the same time that coincided with him having a piano at home and just playing piano every single day. And sometimes it can be that. And he also did a tribute album to Nick Drake. He got heavily into Nick Drake at a certain point and really studied Nick Drake's guitar style, his finger-picking style, and produced and recorded an album of Nick Drake covers as a tribute, and purely as it was an incredible thing to watch his skills go up on the guitar, because I think he'd reached a certain level and he was looking for something new, and the acoustic fingerpicking took him somewhere else.
Okay.
And then having the piano at home as well, brought his piano playing to a new level as well. So now he's composing complex piano songs that previously he wouldn't have been able to do because he didn't have the skills to do it,
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, I think it just comes to that. It's dedication, hard work, practice, learning new techniques, and putting the hours in, That's what it's all about, really.
Absolutely. And yeah, you just kind of touched on some of the stuff that I've been thinking and talking about for a little while, just about where we are. A lot of people are letting go of things and realizing that happiness isn't on external things that you can get. And when you clear a lot of baggage as well, you give the space. So
exactly.
You are aware of the things that grab your attention and interest, and so you can put the time and intention to them without always going through stuff in your mind about past behaviors and things. So it's really great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, happiness is a very subjective term, I think, personally, but it's what I would say is just is letting go of certain negative behavior and negative patterns of thinking. Once you let go of those, you feel automatically a lot freer. Happiness, I'm not really sure what I would call that, but I would definitely say, that certain chains have been cut.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're more open, so you do open yourself up to new experiences, and those things can really accelerate your evolution.
Oh, for sure. And I've been sort of looking into a certain sort of meditation, which talks about that, happiness and unhappiness will come, but it's the chasing of the happiness when it's not there that can sometimes be a problem.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you're reaching for something. I mean, wow. I mean, especially these days as well, because happiness is placed on so many different things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's placed on, it used to be placed on materialism, but now it's not even placed on things that are real in any sense. It's
right.
Like how many approvals your social media status can get.
Exactly.
These things will make you happy, or suicidal, some of these kids, It's, we've got a problem there. We're being divorced from our own consciousness.
Yes. Funny enough, there's a couple of people talked about it this week, actually. And so they're kind of a theme at the moment that, getting back to something that's real and the people around us and what we can be doing.
Yeah, well, I think that reflects in a lot of cool output these days as well. I mean, especially since everything's gone digital, that I still see a lot of appreciation for real musicians out there.
Yeah.
Somebody that guy, he's only 17, but he's been practicing, because he's hot on the guitar.
Yeah.
And people respond to that straight away. I think they always will. That'll never go away despite this disposable digital culture. And I think it's important to use technology in the right way, but don't let it use you,
Right, don't get caught up.
Remember that you're a human being, And this is, and especially when you're doing music, this is why Anathema's experimentation with electronics will only ever revolve around a song. We're not going to put out a sequence of bleeps and rhythms for the sake of it, just because we want to sound arty or clever or whatever, or we want to get on Warp Records,
Yeah, you'll incorporate it into what you're doing.
Exactly, but it's got to revolve around the song. The song Distant Satellites is probably the most electronic and experimental on the new album, but it's a verse-chorus song. It's got a verse, pre-chorus, chorus. It's catchy. It's got hooks. That's what it's about for us. It's that human connection, Without the human connection, the technology doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. Yeah, so use the technology for what you want to be doing, but don't attach to what the things like the internet and other sides can do to you.
Yeah, from a musical perspective, use it to enhance the state of mind that you get when you listen to this music, to enhance the feeling that you get from the music. But don't try and construct an entire song made out of bleeps, because it's not, you're going to... well, as far as we're concerned anyway, I'm not going against electronic music. I absolutely love electronic music. But as far as we're concerned, it's got to have that deep, very moving human emotion.
Well, that just comes back to knowing what you want to create and how you feel about it and what you want to express, and just using the tools then that can be used for that.
Well, we don't really have a choice in our lyrics as well a lot of the time, because we don't necessarily settle down to write lyrics on subjects or have hold a mirror up against society or against the world or anything, and we're certainly not trying to tell anybody else how to live. It's a case of just self-expression,
Well, what I was going to ask about, throughout the changes in your music and how you've changed within yourself, have the process that you use to create the music and the lyrics, has that been a tool or useful in getting or expressing things about your process or what you've experienced?
Yeah, I guess that, especially musically, definitely musically, we've. But there's still a hell of a long way to go, though. There's so many different ways that we haven't uncovered yet. We still, at least that's the way we feel, and still with the lyrics. I mean, if you're writing about external subject matter, well, when have you covered it all? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You'll never ever cover everything you've got to say about what goes on internally. You'll never reach the end of that.
Yeah, but at least a particular topic, perhaps, or a particular moment or feeling about a particular thing. Sometimes it just by releasing it a little bit.
Well, example, on One Last Goodbye, we had a song on the album Judgment called One Last Goodbye, which is about our mother dying, but we chose to call it One Last Goodbye for a reason.
Yeah.
Because we would only ever write that song once, you know, and we don't, you know, so certain things, you know, certain things are off limits.
Right, of course. But in terms of what you have written, has it been? Have you felt a release at certain points, or has it been useful in your own personal development process?
As a catharsis?
Yeah.
No. It feels somewhat cathartic going through the music as a singer, you know, as I sing live especially. It does feel somewhat cathartic, but it doesn't help me understand things any better, you know. It doesn't help me get over anything any better. It's just part of expression, you know. It's like it's going through certain emotions.
Yeah, and just, I guess part of the process of becoming clearer, so what you want to express comes through more easily.
But it's, you know, it doesn't go away. You know, there's a lot of things that I've had. I don't know. I mean, I've had anxiety about mortality for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
And I've been writing about that for years, you know. But I don't know that any of my lyrics or any of my musings on the subject have ever helped me to get over that. I don't think they have.
Right.
You know, I would have to do it in another way. It would have to be some other method, you know, that would help me through that. But at the moment, I think I'm doing okay with it. I think I know what to do about it. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I still feel young enough anyway to that I can just. I really don't have to think about it.
I know what you mean. But at least, but you in terms of writing songs or the process of creating a song, do you kind of touch on those subjects within yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like, say for example, you know, like for certain members of the band who had a fairly rough time of it, we've all experienced trauma.
Yeah.
In one way or another, and some more acute than others about how it affected them, you know. But that never really goes away. You can write songs about it, but it doesn't really go away, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, I don't know. But as you get through life, you find your mind opening up to different ways about how this has affected you and what you want to say about that, you know. You know, instead, like, for example, John would write the lyric for Pressure, which is autobiographical, you know, about certain feelings that he's had, you know, when he's, and this is like in 2003, let's say, something like that, or 2001. And he's talking about an experience that he's had, and like stuff that stayed with him for years, and it's still there now. But how he views upon it now is he's more philosophical now and goes deeper. So instead of him just sitting there talking about how he's feeling, he's saying, okay, this has removed me from you, you know. This has held us back.
Yeah.
And this has made us feel like no matter what, we're just satellites, like distant from each other and in orbit of each other. Sometimes our paths cross and sometimes they get pulled away. But it's...
Yeah, that happens with friends and people. I'm noticing that.
Yeah, so this is where distant satellites come in. So it's a new and profound way of looking at how his own, I don't know what to call it, like his own experiences, put it that way, a broader sense. His own experiences have actually affected his life and affected the people in his life and how he feels about that. You can spend your lifetime with someone and be as distant as ever after 20 years, you know.
Yeah, I guess so. But I guess if each person is working through things better and getting through things better, then if they're together, then also the way they share things can change as well.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's just you know, it's a struggle sometimes. I'm very, very, very fortunate. I've got a very happy home life, you know. So that is a source of enormous strength to me. Do
you feel that's an outward reflection of how you are? You know, you mentioned a few times about how you've slowly got a more positive and optimistic outlook, and quite often our external world can be a reflection of how we are internally. So you've, you know, step by step built this life for yourself.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I think probably a few years ago I was guilty, just the same way a lot of people are, of blaming other things without looking at myself, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And But when I stopped doing that, when I stopped worrying about myself and stopped doubting myself, like I said, a lot of positive things started to happen to me. It just happened, and I think I always knew if I had that certain frame of mind that I would win in the end, and I did, and that's what happened. And so here I am in this. I've got this incredible life now. I'm so fortunate. I'm so lucky to have it. That every single day when I go to bed, I've got to ask myself, okay, what did you do today to deserve the life you have? Did you do something, at least one thing that you can say, okay, that's worthy of this incredibly fortunate position that you have, because that's important.
Yeah, exactly.
Now,
Gratitude as well.
I haven't got money or anything like that. It's not major like that, but it's like just a certain happiness, like a certain strength and contentment. And I've got a family here,
Yeah.
I've got very, very important and beautiful things in my life that I could never wish for anything more,
Well, yeah, because it sounds like you've got gratitude as well. That's
well, exactly, yeah, and you have to have gratitude if you're in my position, because you're a self-employed musician, right?
Yeah.
You have a responsibility to recognize that you've succeeded already.
Yes.
Okay, you don't have a house yet. Okay, fair enough, but you got to keep working. But it's like, okay, I've already succeeded by the sheer fact that I wake up in the morning and I can choose what to do with my day.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it?
And also, if I'm given that responsibility, I don't take it lightly, because especially if you're self-employed, if you're the captain of your own ship and you're not steering it every single day, you're just gonna drift, and you're gonna go nowhere, So, you've got to put the hours in.
That's great advice, because I feel that with myself. I've been had a few moments like that of just drifting and not being on top of it every day, of paying attention to these little things.
Well, because especially and I imagine you're a bit of a journalist. You might be a creative writer, and it's like if you're not doing that every single day, then you're not developing.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not getting any better at what you do. So it's even for those reasons, even not just for other reasons like money or anything else, but it's like really, you owe it to yourself to get better at what you do every single day.
Yeah.
That's as simple as that, If you don't put the hours in, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, I feel that. So what's the next stage? So you're looking forward to touring a little bit more with the album?
Yeah, writing new music, obviously. Now we're discussing when to get together and start the next process of songs. But we'll do it this summer. We'll have a get together, probably here in Paris. Actually, I'll invite the guys, invite Krista. We'll stay here for about 3 or 4 days, and we'll go through everything we've got, and we'll just try and get some kind of plan of action together for next year to see what we want to do. Meanwhile, of course, festivals. We've got some festivals in Europe, and we're going to Australia for the first time.
Oh, nice.
Should be nice. And then the full European tour starts, including the UK and everything, on September. So we're putting together the live show for that, starting to work out what songs we want in the tank to draw from. And from there, really, I guess, we're always focused on new music. We've got a couple of other projects as well in the works. Aside from, the next Anathema full-length album, there's other things that we can do in the meantime, in the interim as well, which we might like to focus on.
Right.
And that's different, either a release or a performance, certain special performances here and there, this kind of thing. Doing stuff we've never really done before. So, yeah, it sounds pretty good. Things are looking pretty good at the moment. We've got a lot going on behind the scenes as well, so sorting the business out.
So, like as you were saying, putting time in to sort out your process so things get more efficient each time. So you're not, especially in things like admin, you don't want to spend too much time on it. So you want to make sure that's all dealt with quickly, so the time you put into the creative side, it can be better used.
Yeah. Well, we're fortunate enough to have a new management team which are working very hard on that side of things at the moment. So it allows us more freedom to be creative, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
But you do have to manage your time, and I think all of us as well. We're all writing music all the time. I've been doing my stuff today, and it's a wonderful way to spend your day, if you can. And I don't know. I think what we'll end up with is too much music for Anathema. So we've got to find other ways of releasing it.
Okay, so instead of like keeping it in the bank and releasing it over time, which
No, we never do that.
yeah,
Anyway, it just gets shoved in the vaults.
right,
I mean, we wouldn't put like stuff that didn't make it to an album because we didn't deem it good enough. It wouldn't make the next album.
yeah, yeah, right. I see what you mean.
Yeah, it's got to be your best stuff. Now, some songs can make it your next album if they're good enough to go on this one, but somehow they just break up the flow. It doesn't really fit. Then you can say, okay, we'll keep that for the next album. Then I think we always have one or two of those from each album anyway. But we're always writing, and we just end up with a big, massive backlog of material. So we've got to find other ways of getting it out there.
Okay, well, I guess that comes back to using the technology in a good way.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. I don't know. Let's just stay focused, stay creative, and let's see where it all takes us. But we're very, very grateful for everything that's happening to us. The audience is getting a lot bigger, and we're working hard though. We're putting a lot into it. And I think sometimes you get out of it what you put in, so...
Well, that's been I've been thinking about that a lot recently because I can see at points in my life, especially over the last couple of years, when maybe I have been drifting a little bit, and it's very clear that can happen. That what you don't put in, nothing happens. And so...
Yeah.
Yes, great advice.
Yeah, I think so. It's absolutely vital, I mean, it's also, like, if you work fast and hard as well, it's the sheer momentum. It just starts to build up its own momentum and its own force, and everybody wants to know what you're doing, and it's really interesting. So, that's part of the reason why it's getting a lot bigger the last couple of years, because we've been working hard. We put something out every single year. We keep that going, we won't go far wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And you're saying increase the audience, and the gigs are going to be wonderful. Do you enjoy playing live?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to Barcelona in a couple of weeks. That's the next gig.
Okay.
Because we're playing this pretty cool lineup actually. It's a festival outside in Barcelona in the park, and the lineup's pretty good. It's just one day, and there's us, Opeth, Tesseract, Fish, Alcest, Pain of Salvation, and Antimatter on one day.
Wow.
That's pretty good lineup. So I'm looking forward to that. And quite a lot of those bands are our friends. In fact, apart from Pain, we know everyone apart from Pain and Salvation.
There you go.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like a harmonization happening everywhere.
Yeah,
there are these little things popping up, aren't every now and then? Like it's happening again in London, and then like in Clapham Common or Finsbury Park, they'll put up some boardings and get a couple of gigs on, and some events during the day.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That sounds cool.
So and a few people mentioned gigs in Barcelona and stuff. So hopefully, if each little zone starts doing more and more of this, then that's another outlet, isn't it? Because I guess coming back to the record industry side of things, sometimes a lot of bands only way they can get momentum or make or sort of guarantee an income is by playing live.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. But to us, it never feels like work. I mean, like for example, we were on a promotional tour a couple of weeks ago, and it was like 2 weeks around Europe. And most of the places we played were actual record stores. So we were basically doing free concerts every day.
Right.
And it was great. I really enjoyed it. It
like
was
a
superb.
kind of small venue vibe.
In a record shop, an independent record shop. We did a couple in Germany. They were like those big like mega store kind of places. So that was more of a proper gig. But in the UK, it was like some pretty cool independent record shops and that. And it was fun, and it was cool to just play free gigs like that and talk to people afterwards and meet everyone. And I enjoyed it.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so these little things that crop up that you get a bit of a buzz out of.
Yeah. There's all kinds of. Like I said, we've got a few ideas of something cool to do next year as well. So keep your eye out. It should be good.
Oh, it certainly will.
In the UK, like.
But yeah, I'm just glad to hear how it's going and that it's still going, and you're so. As I said, like balanced within yourself and so clear, and the process is still happening, and the momentum's building. And
thanks very much.
Yeah, and the new album's great, and you're keeping it going and stuff. So that's good to hear.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, and thank you. Thanks for your time. It's and also you've spoken about a lot of the things I've talked about and been working through myself in terms of just where I'm at in my life and what I want to be doing. And you've shared lots of nice perspectives which can help people as well.
Oh, that's cool. Thanks very much. Oh, that's cool. Thanks very much. Oh, that's cool. Thanks very much.